12.5 metric tons of CO2. That's the amount of carbon put into the atmosphere as the result of the average person in the UK going about their day-to-day lives. Collectively, that's 168 million elephants worth. Now, that's not a really easy image to think about, so I'll make it easier for you. That's 3 elephants each. Everyone that you're in a room with right now, imagine 3 elephants. Now, this isn't a new problem. It's one we've known about for a really, really long time. In fact, at the moment, it's almost forced upon us in our day-to-day lives. I spent some time working as a youth worker, and the conversation of climate change would come up quite often. And I'd hear people my age and older say, "Oh, it's terrible about the climate, isn't it? But have you seen? They're releasing some beavers near Bristol. Oh, and there's a big thing in the ocean now, which is cleaning up the plastic." Where I saw genuine worry and panic was in the eyes of some of the young people, worried about the future and the planet they're inheriting. I had a 12-year-old tell me that one day he would love a family with kids, but feel like he'll never get the chance due to climate change. There is hope, and it needs to be communicated well. You see, the time that we are in right now is so pivotal, it goes beyond the legacy of any individual, any country, or any company. The good news is, though, is that all it takes is for you and the person on your left and your right to make some good decisions, and we can get through it. So back to the elephants. If we're responsible for 3 elephants each and we need to lower it, we can never really get down to 0 elephants through reduction alone. Let me tell you why. Every year, you breathe out 1/5 of an elephant's worth of CO2. That's the equivalent to 5 kangaroos' worth of CO2 you breathe out. You could see it as you breathing a weekly large armadillo, a daily pheasant, or a bumblebee every minute you breathe. By the time that you do the basics, eating, washing, and drinking, it's likely that that will be around 1/5 of your carbon output. So we can never get down to 0 elephants through reduction, but we can get down to 1. So before carbon offsetting even enters your mind, we need to reduce. It would take planting all of the non-agricultural and non-built on land in the UK 10 times over to sequester enough carbon for our current output. That is 4 more totally wild carbon sequestering United Kingdoms. So how can we lower our impact? Well, I think we can micro-offset a lot of our carbon through our future actions. Let me give you an example. I have a brother and a nephew that live down in Cornwall, so a few times a year, I love to go down and see them. So I travel down, and while I'm there, I might enjoy an ice cream, a few Cornish pasties, some coffee, a Sunday roast, in a pub. Before grabbing a meal deal for the journey home. Now, my trips to Cornwall are already well on their way to producing a CO2 horse. So, what can I do about that? I can make changes to the day-to-day. I could be more conscious of walking into work, putting the dishwasher on eco mode, or going meat-free a few days a week. It might sound trivial, but unless you're an astronaut, it's likely that your day-to-day will have a bigger impact than one-offs. Let's go again. as approaching New Year's Eve, I might decide to go to a fireworks display with my wife, hopefully far away from any animals that might be scared by it. And while we're there, we might have a hot chocolate, and it's inevitable that us being there, our contribution is about 22 hedgehogs worth of carbon into the sky. Now, it would only take switching from a daily latte to a filter coffee for 40 days. That's one small change for just over a month. So after doing this for a little while, we can get down to one carbon elephant. But you know what that leaves us with, right? A 4 metric ton CO2 elephant in the room. Now, what we've got to know here is that carbon, CO2, is not the enemy. It quite literally gives the plants and the trees what they need to give us air to breathe. It's about balance, because there is a bit too much in the atmosphere right now. It's only now that we can start to look to rewilding, the recreation of wetlands, tree planting, and planting wildflower meadow, all of which are fantastic at taking carbon and putting it into the ground where it doesn't affect climate change. In the same way that carbon is not the enemy of this situation, us, humans, are not the heroes. In fact, nature has a 4.8 billion year head start on managing these ecosystems and looking after the planet. You could even consider the microbes and the mammals, the bugs and the birds, to be the creators and the constructors of the ecosystems that they live in. By supporting nature, you're supporting something that is very, very difficult to measure and very, very difficult to plan. But it's in these difficult to measure metrics where things get really interesting. See, through supporting nature, you're supporting an army that to the core of their being are good for the planet. They don't see borders or walls. They don't drive cars or stream content. But they have lost a lot of habitat. That means they've lost a lot of food. And we know that the more food there is for pollinators, the more pollinators there are. And the more pollinators there are, the more pollination happens. It only takes a small patch of wildflowers in your garden or a flowering tree to make a real difference. You're providing food and sustenance for tens of thousands of pollinators before they go out into the wild and do their thing. Now, that kind of space isn't a luxury we all have. But the good news is, even a window box can have a massive effect, especially in an urban environment. See, a window box planted with some nectar-rich flowers has a profound effect. You could be providing a young bee with the sustenance it needs to survive before going on to over 100,000 flowers in its short 50-day life. Fertilizing seeds ready to grow next year. We all produce greenhouse gases at different levels on different days. That's why the answer has to be with us, the individual. We can act and react to lower our impact. We can counterbalance what we do with our future actions. And most of all, if we support these biodiverse masters at work, we can undo some, hopefully most of the harm that we've caused. So how will we know when we get down to zero elephants? Now, that's not really the right question when we're trying to measure the immeasurable. We have to answer it individually. We have to answer it individually through our actions and through supporting our biodiverse friends at work. It's only then can we answer it collectively? Through cleaner air, cleaner water, better soils, large, biodiverse wild spaces, and ultimately, reversing some of climate change. Thank you.